Okay, guys, the biggest wealth creator in our country, property. And in turbulent property times, is it about time in the market or time in the market? We're going to give you some interesting information on the property market today. Stay tuned.
I'm the ringleader, so listen up.
Wow.
Good morning.
Josh Wapshot, known internally at Novak as the property economist. It's great to have you on the show today, talking about exactly where we're at in our property market cycle, how to pick it,
Mm,
how to get it right, how to make money out of the property market with timing.
timing. Yes, well, history doesn't repeat it perfectly, but it often rhymes. The title today, and we've been going over the last quarter century, last 25 years of property data, over corrections. So those correction periods, stabilization periods, and then growth periods. So just getting some timing around how long those periods are and when we see change. And generally, from back early 2000s, GFCs, et cetera, et cetera. We've often seen correction periods last between 12 and 18 months. We've
That's all.
seen, yeah, historically, Australia's had very, very low. We definitely grow more than we fall in value. So generally, correction periods, 12 to 18 months to find the bottom. Then we have around a 6 to 9 month timing as an average to stabilize pricing. And then generally from the previous peak to the next sort of area of sustained growth, that's roughly been about 2.5 years as an average. And every time there's been a correction, property prices have surpassed the previous high the last 50 years from the data I've looked at this morning. So every time we've had a peak, property prices have fallen over an average of around 2 to 3 years. Property prices have surpassed that previous peak. So, we've been through COVID shutdowns, GFC financial crisis, exorbitant interest rate hikes, affordability issues and investor fatigue back in the early 2000s. And every time it's been not exactly the same, but marginally exactly the same sort of outcome and journey for property prices. So found that quite interesting, Mark. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I think putting that into everyday terms for someone, um, whenever you want to buy the stock in the stock market, whenever you want to buy the property, whenever you want to make the investment, you never want to buy at the top of the market. You never want to pay overs or a premium. Everyone loves a bargain. Everyone loves wholesale more than they love retail. It's a fact. We love a bargain. So when it comes to making your biggest investment in your life, and you're about to get on that train, on that roller coaster, you're like, oh my god, I hope this is the right time and I'm doing the right thing. So I think when the market's on the way up, you naturally can just jump in and feel good about it. When the market's potentially leveling out or on the way down, you're going to be pretty bloody nervous. My message to people is it's not time in of when you do that, it's time in the market. You hold it for 10, you're going to do double.
Definitely, and it's so strange you picked that up, Mark, because like obviously my background, um, previous to Novak, so investment stocks, that sort of a thing. But you see it in everything. When we've recently had, take something recent, for example, everyone would have seen gold, silver running to all-time highs. And, your local mint down at the city had lines down the street when it was at its all-time highs. Now we've seen silver drop by about 50%, gold's come down about 25%. I said this to my mates last week. I'm like, isn't it strange? Everything's on discount and you don't see the lines you know, for people looking to purchase, but they're happy to go and rush in at the all-time high. And it just correlates to most asset classes. Everyone likes to jump on the FOMO train, but the nervous Nelly comes out when things are on the down. So it's just funny how the human mind works with those sorts of things. You know, people are, oh, I've got to get in, I've got to get in. Prices are all-time high, and then you're getting the exact same thing 6 months later at a discount, but you're not a buyer anymore. It's funny how it
Is
all
that
works.
is that sheep mentality or herd mentality, or whatever you want to call it? You feel much more comfortable when everyone's doing it, but unfortunately, yeah, it's you're buying in premium time. So I would dare to say these are wholesale times. I would dare to say it's the bell at the bottom of the market. Have you got the ability to throw that graph up that we looked at today, or do you want me to show it on my screen?
Yeah, yeah. I've got it here.
This is really interesting, and I want everyone to see this. And it's done by Cotality, which is the biggest property data company in Australia. Now, if you look at this carefully, the different colours that are there, that's a 24-month cycle. So we haven't marked the property market going up, we've marked the property market going down. So why that's important is all these cycles have lasted as small as 6 months and as long as 24 months. That's it. So talking about the bell at the bottom of the market, I think you can confidently say, within that 12-month period of those 24 months, any of those times are a great time to buy. Are you going to wait from 1 month to the next? Probably not. But in terms of biannually or quarterly, I think you've got a good reference when you look at that. Now, I'd love people to get access to that. What I'll get you to do, guys, is I'm gonna upload that graph. If you write the word cycle to this number after midday today, 0460, SMS this number. I'll say it again, 0460 111 We're going to send you the property cycles and the data for Northern Beaches. This will give you, I think, data doesn't lie. Data doesn't lie. So I think it gives you a really good reference.
Definitely, definitely. And I think putting it in perspective or looking at it at a different angle, if we take those averages that we've seen over the last sort of corrections, I think this would have started around March, the early beginnings of the correction. So it sort of takes us to around June next year and beyond, which sort of works out quite well, because if you looked at the budget, they did a reading on inflation, and they saw inflation coming right down. So they saw this year sort of seeing a peak of about 5%. Then they saw a really sharp turn down in 26-27 period to about 2.5%. So maybe the stars align there. Inflation drops, monetary policy loosens. All of a sudden, people can borrow more, pay more, afford more. So, that almost marries up with your average timeline where we might see those prices start to stabilize towards the end of that timing. Then you have that sort of sustained, or that stable stability period where people start to gain their confidence back. And that's where the masses come in after that, generally 6 to 9 months, and prices start to perform again. And it sort of makes sense with all the data you see, whether it's economic, around inflationary data, monetary policy. I mean, these are the types of things that always play a part in property economics. I guess the only thing we probably haven't experienced in this data set is just the changes to residential property, mainly with negative gearing and the capital gains discount. But what you've got to remember is, with capital gains discount as well, it applies to all asset classes essentially, so almost every. So it's not like you're taking your money out of the property market and putting it in the stock market, and you're probably better off holding it in the property market for things like leverage. I had this discussion last night. One of my mates had just purchased or just settled in the last 3 months a nice little apartment down in Bronte. He was going on about, I'm paying $8,000 a month in mortgage repayments. I was probably better off renting a nice place for $5,000 a month and putting the excess funds into the market or somewhere else. But one thing you get out of property is the leverage, and you don't have to realize those gains that you've made or equity that you've made. So you don't have to sell to realize those profits. They can be used to purchase additional property. So I think that's something that we all forget in these tricky times, and that's something you've probably harped on it to me, Mark.
And also, yeah, absolutely. And there's also the sheer lockout that from policy changes or lending changes, you can actually get locked out, which I think's something no one really talks about, but is super, super important. So people are like, yeah, you know what, I'll wait. But I'm like, hang on a sec. If you wait, you may not get that loan. And if, because if you look at people now, they're having to purchase because of what's happening with the negative gearing, they're not going to be able to lend as much money. So like, oh shit, we've got to buy something now. So I think it's really, really important, guys, to look at those fundamental changes that you're going to get, and are they going to lock you out with policies or with loans and with stuff like that? Because you sort of you try to outsmart the market, and the market outsmarts you. Super dangerous. So if I guess the bottom line, if you've got the ability to buy and you're comfortable and you can buy, just do it. That whole
Yeah.
cycle thing, it's going to whip your ass sometimes, because you won't be able to get that loan, or the policies will change and you miss the boat. Look at negative gearing. People could have bought at the first quarter of the year and had negative gearing. Overnight, they couldn't have negative gearing on their property that they were going to buy because of that policy change. So smart to get in if it works for you now.
Yeah, Lisa's put it right there. Show me a person who bought 10 years ago that lost money through all the trouble and tribulations that we've seen. And that just goes to the data again, that every time that we've had a correction, the previous peak has been surpassed. So if you're holding through those corrections, generally you're coming out the other side further positive. So yeah, definitely an interesting landscape. And with all the media that's sort of put down your throat, it's hard to think otherwise. But I also always think it's important, whether it's the property market or any price action in any market, history has always been an indication of somewhat what happens during what sort of period. And I mean, we've got plenty of data over the last 25, 50, 100 years, and Northern Beaches continue to double every 10 years. This is a great buying opportunity, and it's more like the doors on the sale will close towards the end of the year to mid next year. So you've got your opportunity to get your head in the market and buying. 6% we've maybe seen, Mark. If we pull up that graph that you text that number, look at that graph. A lot of the corrections over all those periods were generally anywhere between 5, 6, 7%. The biggest ones being anywhere between sort of 11 to 13%. So, these aren't crashes, these aren't massive movements. And like I said, it's always recovered and done better.
You know what? Replace the word data with history. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
History doesn't lie. Data doesn't lie.
Doesn't lie.
Get into property, and thank you very much, Mr. Wapshot.
Thanks, everyone. Good chat this morning.
Have a great day. It's not timing, it's time in. Love you. See ya. Bye.
Bye.
In.